Recorded live from the secret underground lair of Crimson Cowl Comics and Collectibles, this is the Crimson Cowl Comic Club Podcast.
Sasquatch, the Loch Ness Monster, Mothman, the Jersey Devil, Chupacabra. For millennia, these creatures have perplexed the human race. But what if they are forces of good? What if they have been sent here by a federation of more advanced alien species to help and defend the human race? That's the premise of League of Cryptids, a new comic book by Grant Lankard, creator of the smash hits Beowulf and Memoirs of the Morbid. His new comic, League of Cryptids, is a 4-part story involving these 5 creatures banding together to defend Earth from an invading alien race, just as one of their members is losing faith in the human race and questioning their mission. The adventure continues in League of Cryptids 2.
Together we will help this young species known as humans develop. I'm Anthony.
I'm Katie.
I'm Jim.
Welcome to another Crimson Cowl creator interview, and today we welcome comic writer and artist Grant Lankard. How's it going, Grant?
Doing good. How are you doing?
Pretty good. A couple weeks ago on this very program, I talked about a comic book that I got through a Kickstarter, League of Cryptids, and now we have the creator of League of Cryptids here talking about the current Kickstarter for issues number 1 as well as number 2. So what we're going to do in this episode here, we're going to hang out with Grant. We're going to learn all about this Kickstarter. We're going to learn all about Grant and his other work as well. The people watching at home on YouTube got to see the trailer for the Kickstarter, which is currently going right now. And at the time that this drops, we'll have roughly a little under 3 weeks to back it yet. So there's plenty of time. But for those who are unaware of what League of Cryptids is, do you want to give them the quick elevator pitch?
Yeah, the idea is the cryptids. The idea is that cryptids are ancient aliens who were sent here to protect and help Earth develop. Earth is kind of viewed as like the backwoods of the galaxy, kind of like the same way we would view, like, I don't know, maybe like Alabama or like Kentucky, the kind of place that most, species don't really want to go. So these cryptids are Sasquatch, Mothman, the Loch Ness Monster, Jersey Devil, and Chupacabra. Were sent here to kind of protect, kind of ambassadors for the rest of the galaxy. And in this story in particular, there's an alien invasion by a group of aliens who are based on a lesser-known cryptid called the Loveland Frogmen.
Yes. And I guess the first question is, do you remember what the original germ of the idea was, where this came to be, and how it became a comic book?
Yeah, I remember I was looking at I was looking at a book about cryptids, and I remember they had all the different cryptids broken down by their different abilities and their appearance and stuff, and it kind of reminded me of like comic book characters. Like, I don't know if you're old enough to remember like the trading card phase of the 90s, where you could, buy a bunch of trading cards with like Spider-Man and Batman and stuff like that on them. But it made me think, oh, hey, that would be cool if cryptids were a form of superheroes. And, the more I started thinking about it, the more it felt like cryptids kind of lined up with the whole superhero team archetypes. Like how different superhero teams have archetypes. Like there's the strong guy, there's the leader, there's the stoic leader, there's like the crazy kind of like loose cannon one. There's like the comic relief. And I started thinking like, oh, this actually would make for a cool little superhero team.
And now with using the cryptids, I'll tell you how I got into interest into this book. But before I do that, I'd like to know your interest on cryptids in general. Was this just something you've had kind of a lifelong obsession with them and movies and other fiction? So how did you get to be like, hey, I want to play with these characters?
So I'm gonna say right off the bat, I don't necessarily believe in all of the cryptids. I think some of them are more likely to exist than others. Um, uh, but to be my thing with cryptids is I feel the same way about cryptids that I do about conspiracy theories, where it's like I find the community around conspiracy theories more fascinating than the actual conspiracy theory. I did I Yeah, I really love cryptids. Um I love how each little area of the United States has their own little cryptid. I love all the festivals and museums and art that's sprung up around cryptids. Um, yeah, I can sit and read about them or watch YouTube videos about them for hours. Just I find them endlessly fascinating. I find it amazing that they're still coming up with new cryptids. And some of the designs of these cryptids from purely like a character design standpoint beat anything that's coming out of like Pixar or Lucasfilm or anything like that. Like the Fresno Nightcrawler, which is just a pair of legs, is so freaking weird. Like who comes up with these ideas?
Yeah, whenever there's like a Bigfoot, Sasquatch, any kind of Yeti type of character in a comic book, we go through the previews catalog. Anytime I see anything related to Sasquatch, my eyes are immediately drawn to that. And I'm trying to trace back how I came across League of Cryptids. I don't know if it was just like mutual friends through Instagram or if it just the algorithm showed it or shared into my stream. But all I know is that the second I saw it and I saw the lineup, I saw Sasquatch right away, and then getting the concept that it was basically like a Justice League of cryptids, and like, oh yeah, this seems like a sure thing, and just right away I was ready on board.
Yeah, and I wanted to say thank you for mentioning it on your show because it's always nice when people like whenever you get a review or people giving their 2 cents about because a lot of times like I send out these comic books and then I never hear from the people afterwards.
Yeah, and myself and a couple of our members, we've done Kickstarter campaigns. It's always one of those things that you'll back a couple, and then whether they have the work done right away and it's ready to ship, or you wait a year, and it's always a surprise when you get a mystery package in the mail, just being like, "Well, I don't remember what I ordered," and then you open up, being like, "Oh yeah, that's right," and so
That's the
it's
best
fun.
feeling.
Yeah, it's always fun to kind of get that in there. If any of you guys have any questions, we'll cycle those in. But I know Katie had one um, for the cryptids specifically. Go ahead.
Yes, so I really liked this book. My question is, how and why did you settle on this group of cryptids to kind of feature as your heroes?
I would say these are kind of the five most well known
Hmm.
cryptids. There are definitely other cryptids that I want to kind of cycle in. I think one of my favorite, maybe I don't know. It's hard for me to pick one favorite, but one of my favorite is the yeah, that's a good photo or a good image. Um,
Sure.
there's so many different cryptids that I want to include in the comic book, and we're just going to have to wait for future storylines to
Yeah.
put them in.
Yeah, there's an artist friend of mine, Monica Geller, who's into cryptids, and you go to her table, and every state that she goes to, she's got drawings of that state's, a whole basically a whole gallery of all their cryptids and everything. So it's always real interesting just to see kind of what you're talking about with how do they come up with certain designs, and there's just so many of them, and I just find it fascinating because it's just cool to kind of see everyone's take on the character designs and everything, which leads into, actually, I'll go to Jim first if you want to jump in there, Jim.
Yeah, Grant, since you're talking about possibly adding new cryptids in the future, I'm just going to pitch out right here. One of Wisconsin's most famous is the hodag,
The Hodag.
monster
Okay,
from the North Woods. So just to keep
Seconded.
that one in mind. It is one Katie and I are a little bit familiar with because we've actually used it as part of our gaming. So
They do a lot of D&D matches and stuff like that.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome. I know the Hodag. I'm looking up an image of it. I can't remember what the Hodag's big thing was.
it was
Yeah, it's kind of
created
cool.
as a hoax, but then people tended to believe that the hoax was a hoax and still believed that the monster was a real monster. And there's festivals and everything like that going on to this day over this creature, and it looks like a large dog-sized, squat, wide-mouthed,
Oh yeah,
horned and spike-tailed lizard.
it has great teeth.
Yep.
Mhm.
It's kind of like
I
a
was gonna say-
combination. It's
Oh,
kind of
go
like
ahead.
it's kind of like a combination of like a pit bull and a stegosaurus.
Yes,
Good
that's a good
comparison.
Yeah, totally. I was gonna say out of the group of cryptids in the book, I really like El Chupacabra, and I like the legends and the lore surrounding it, and there's kind of two competing thoughts about Chupacabra. Like there's very much like people who are like insisting that it's an alien, or it's a little more reptilian and lizard-like, and then there's the Chupacabras that very much look like dogs or werewolves
Yeah.
or even coyotes with mange, and I find that really interesting how those two stories kind of came to be. And um I just really like that cryptid a lot. It's really cool to me.
So I haven't had to deal with too many people. What I was worried about when I started doing this was I was worried about people who have like a very firm idea of, this is what Mothman looks like,
Hmm.
period, and I won't take any variation whatsoever. But so far I haven't dealt with that too much.
Okay,
Um,
that's good.
yeah, and yeah, the chupacabra is one where it's like um, I get that there's a lot of different variations on what people think chupacabra looks like.
Yes.
Um, some people think it's more reptilian. Some people think it looks kind of like a like a like a scraggly dog, or yeah. But so far, nobody's been too mad about my depictions
That's
of
good.
of the um, of the cryptids. Um, I don't know. Now that I've said that, I'm probably jinxing myself, but uh, yeah, so
That's
far so good.
That's a great segue into what I was going to ask is about your creative team. And with you coming in as the writer, you're also the inker on this book. As an artist yourself, how did you approach, when you found your penciler, and how do you approach the designs? Where do you bring that, or do you have the penciler kind of bring that? Kind of talk about that process.
So I do layouts for all of the pages, and whenever I work with an artist who's other than myself, I always let them know, like, hey, I don't want to back you into a corner or anything. Like, I want your feedback too, just because I feel like people, people do a better job for you when you listen to their ideas. So, I said, if there's ever a design or a page that I give you and you're just not happy with it, feel free to shoot some. I mean, um, it's very, very rare that um, we've gotten into any big disagreements, but for the most part, the finished page at least ends up looking like in the ballpark um, of what I originally came up with. And I mean, and I don't do the layouts like that because I don't think that the artist can do it. I do that for my own good because I mean, I don't know how people write a comic book if when you don't know how many panels are going to be on the finished page. You know what I mean? Like, for me, when I'm writing the comic book, it's easier for me to think about it visually.
Oh, cool. And as we're talking about names of creators, it just played in my head that when I said Monica, I said Monica Geller, which is a fictional character. Monica Gallagher is her name, is the Cryptids artist that I was
Oh,
talking
really?
about. But that was like sitting in my brain where I'm like, I said something that wasn't right, so I just want to correct that on record there. Monica Gallagher. So if you're into cryptids and anybody who's into this and that, she has a lot of awesome designs out there. If any of you two have any other questions about League of Cryptids, you can have those ready. But in the meantime, Grant, if you want to let our viewers know what kind of reward tiers and what you can get in this current Kickstarter.
Yeah, so we have three different covers. We have the basic cover. We have the deluxe cover. The deluxe cover is a little bit more expensive, but there's also there's some pinups in the back of the book in addition to just the regular storyline. And then something that we're doing that's new this time is we also have a team up with the YouTube channel Spine Ticks. If you look at the cover where they're kind of hanging out with the rock band, so those are all the members of the YouTube channel Spine Ticks,
Oh, okay.
and obviously this is not in canon or anything, but this cover is just like a fun little the cryptids hanging out with the members of this YouTube
Fun
channel.
little incentive for their channel and everything.
Exactly, yeah, and it's cool. It's a mutually beneficial arrangement. I get a lot of free advertising on their YouTube channel by them, talking about this, and then they get to see themselves, in this band hanging out with various members of the League of Cryptids.
Awesome. Jim?
Well, I was going to comment. I got to read the PDF which you provided us. Thank you for that. I enjoyed the book very much, but I was downloading it at work and had a bad connection, so I'm trying to scroll through it as it's coming in. And the first thing I get up is a close up of a creature, and I'm like, "Why is Chewbacca in this book?" It was like, I don't know who designed this. Was that a model for you guys to do that? Make it look like Chewbacca, or
No,
is that
I mean, I don't
coincidence?
know if that was intentional. I mean, I think, Sasquatch in general kind of looks like Chewbacca. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, some of the characters, I definitely took them away from their original design. Like, I mean, obviously, the Loch Ness Monster doesn't look very much like what we're used to seeing the Loch Ness Monster like, because let's be honest, it would be hard to have like a superhero who looked like a giant dinosaur. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
And then
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
The other thing I was going to say was you talked about making like a group, like a superhero group, like Super Friends, Justice League, Avengers, whatever. When I was reading it, it kind of reminded me of League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, where they
sure.
creature or characters from different literature and put them together. You did that with this, and that's the kind of the feel I got when I was reading this book, which I liked, because I thought League of Extraordinary Gentlemen was a great idea.
Yeah, I mean I'll take that. I'll take that as a comparison, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to compare me to Alan Moore any day, I'll take that.
There you go.
Yeah, I think the first issue did a good job of bringing in these characters, and obviously a lot of the audience will have their, a lot of information going into it, on their version of what these cryptids can be. So I think it feels like a great concept to kind of jump in. Like, it's a big concept that I think it's easy to jump in because of the vast knowledge that you can just take from any source of medium with these characters and pretty quickly attach it to whatever story you're telling. So I think it was a pretty well fast paced first issue to get right into the action. So I look forward to more. So we're gonna have more with issue number 1 and issue number 2 in the Kickstarter. Do you have a set number of issues for this particular arc that you're doing, or first batch of stories?
Yeah, so this is gonna be a 4-issue story, and I do plan on doing I do plan on doing more team miniseries, but something that I also would like to do is I'd like to do like individual, like maybe like one shots. Have one for for Sasquatch, one for Chupacabra, one for Mothman, etc.
Yeah, it'd definitely be a good idea, especially if some people just stumble along those and then find out, hey, we can get more of it with League of Cryptids. So, good idea. We're going to talk about your other comic projects as well, but before we do that, let's learn about Grant and his creative journey on what was your earliest memory with whether it's writing or art? Do you have any kind of fun story on where that journey began?
Yeah, so I have another comic book that I do called Beowulf, and that was the comic book that I did as a kid. I don't know if you did this. I don't know if you did this, but when we were playing on the playground, we would come up with like different superhero ideas, and we would run around the playground. I would be Beowulf, and then my friends would be whatever superhero ideas they came up with. And where Beowulf came from was my parents had a Time Life Beowulf book, and when I read it kind of just reminded me of like a superhero character. Like, it kind of dawned on me like, oh, these are kind of just like superheroes, but from 1,000 years ago.
Totally.
Yeah, I think most of my playground adventures is basically just Ninja Turtles, but yeah, you can always expand on that. It's always fun just to have the imagination and kind of cool. I haven't read Beowulf yet, but I did add as a digital add-on for this current Kickstarter, so I can get a little taste of that. And since we're talking about Beowulf, so the trade paperback, is there one out now, or it's on the verge of coming out?
Yeah, right here.
There we go.
That, uh,
That's
that was
6
good, right?
issues.
Yeah, so this is all 6 issues of Beowulf. Uh, yeah, and we released the other 6 issues over the course of like the last 2 or 3 years, and this is all 6 issues in one. And I'm actually working on the prequel for this right now.
And I read the premise of it, and I had a good laugh because it might not be a specific kind of genre that I'm normally drawn to, but when I read that premise, I'm like, oh, this seems right up my alley just for the comedic aspect. So can you let people know what Beowulf is all about?
Yeah, so the idea is so a teenage girl, Hazel, is sitting in her bedroom one night, and her cat starts talking, and he says, I just had a vision of a dragon waking up after 2,000 years. And Hazel is kind of like, well, what are we going to do about that? He goes, well, I only know of one guy who went head to head with a dragon and survived it, and that was Beowulf. So we need to go track down the reincarnation of Beowulf. But it turns out that something's been lost over like the last 1,000 years. Beowulf has been reincarnated as a 30-something slacker. Um, so he's the kind of guy who sits around and plays video games, eats pizza, doesn't really know much about sword handling. So most of the comic book is Hazel and Mooney trying to get Victor. That's the name of Beowulf reincarnation. Trying to get Victor ready to go up against this dragon. And then I don't want to give too much away, but there's a few twists and turns there towards the end when he goes up against this dragon.
Yeah, once you started adding in the reincarnation with the 30-something slacker, I'm like, okay, now my attention, okay, this is something I'm going to read, and just the idea of throwing that comedy in with that kind of genre seems like a lot of fun. One of our club members, Kirby, who is unable to make it to this episode today, he always has a great question for every single creator that we bring onto the show. So on his behalf, I was going to ask, he's always curious on what the creators first published work is, whether it be something if they sent in a fan letter or fan art to a comic book, or maybe it was a school project, newspaper type of thing. So do you have any kind of story that comes to mind on what could have been your first published work prior to getting into comics here?
I mean, I'm sure I did something when I was a kid or when I was a teenager. Off the top of my head, I don't remember too much of that. Um, I did do a comic book before Beowulf, which was a comic book. A couple of guys that I went to college with, we didn't get jobs straight out of college, so we were like, "Hey, do you guys want to do something creative?" And we ended up putting out an anthology comic book called Lines and Squiggles, which is a fun little comic book. I think it's more of like a niche. It's more like Robert Crumb style, or kind of like more like artsy kind of comic. But I don't know. I'm still proud of it, but I don't sell very many copies of it, to be honest with you.
And talking about working with other creators, that's a great segue into talking about one of the add-ons that I got with the first League of Cryptids Kickstarter. And we're talking about Memoirs of the Morbid. So if you want to let people know about this anthology series.
Yeah, so Memoirs of the Morbid is the horror anthology that I do. And you can kind of see it's in the EC style, or what I call like Tales from the Crypt style. And yeah, it comes with four different covers, or I'm sorry, five different covers, and it's got five different stories. Uh, and each story is self-contained, and it's hosted by the Ghoul Master, who's kind of a parody of the Crypt Keeper. He's kind of the Crypt Keeper, except he's really bad at coming up with puns, and he's kind of like an entitled celebrity.
Looking at, and are there two editions? Because I have the blue one. There's another one as well, and all
Yeah.
different stories. And okay, at least with this one, that you do the story and art with all of the Ghoul Master intros and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But the lead story here, which is one of my favorites, because I'm a big Peanuts fan, and not saying that this is Peanuts at all, because this title is called "It's the Truly Repugnant Pumpkin, Charlie, last name redacted." So it's a great, this is very like mature reader type of stuff here. But can you kind of talk about how you got involved with this? Is this something that you created or collectively with the other people in this book?
Yeah, I mean, I've always liked horror, and I've always liked like Twilight Zone-esque horror has always been my favorite. And I had a bunch of little ideas for stories, and doing anthologies are nice because that way you can split up the work evenly between you and the other writers and artists. And that way you also have 5 times as many people to, help promote the comic book. So, yeah, I always wanted to do a horror anthology like this. And it's been fun. So far, I mean, all of the other writers and artists have been great, and it's nice. It's a good way to get your name out there doing anthologies.
Yeah, I've really been drawn to those. They've been doing a lot of good ones, especially with horror, with EC Comics coming back and them doing the new like epitaphs and the Cruel Universe, and I just been digging all that. So anytime I come across a an anthology series, especially through a campaign like like Kickstarter or Zoop and things like that, it's always, like you said, kind of a good way to be recognized. And I always love if I go across a table at a Comic Con or something in an artist alley. I just love seeing a lot of examples of people that I have no idea who they are, and kind of just really just not needing to, be like, okay, I have to buy a whole story arc to get, how this storyteller thinks. And yeah, I'm a big fan of anthologies.
It's a good way to discover new creators too.
And so, a next little chapter in our interview here is talking about Comicsburg. Can you talk about this publishing group?
Yeah, so we had a bunch of different creators in Pittsburgh who were kind of working independently, and we kind of said to each other, well, we can have 4 companies that put out one comic book, or we could have one company that puts out 4 different comic books, and we felt like it makes us look better to have a unified comic book. So it's kind of like Image in that, um, I'm independent. I put out the comic books that I want to put out. Marvin, the other creator, he puts out the comic books that he wants to put out. I can't tell him, no, you're not allowed to put out this. Yeah, so I guess it's kind of the Image model in that regards, where there's no money up front. Uh, you get money based on how many copies you sell. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Katie?
Um, I am loving hearing about this Comicsburg idea. One question I have is, like, what kind of advice or maybe words of wisdom would you give to an independent creator who is feeling really nervous about sharing their work beyond just themselves and a laptop?
I'm always afraid, like when I tell people this, I always I'm always worried that I'm going to be discouraging, but I also want to be honest that it is a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work, and I hate to say this, but it's also a lot of money. Um,
Yeah, very true.
I mean, especially if you just want to write. Um, people who don't. I mean, fortunately, I mean, I do a lot of the work on these comic books. I do most of the graphic design. I do all the lettering. I even do some of the art. But for people who don't feel comfortable doing that sort of thing, people who just want to write, what I always say is open the first page of a comic book and look at the credits.
Hmm.
Each of those people is going to want money up front.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
so the stuff I say, number one, start saving money. Number two, don't be afraid to go after fans on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, um, Threads. I mean, the day and age of comic book publishers, having like $10,000, $20,000 campaign
Hmm.
advertising budgets is over.
Yeah.
Um, where books end up getting bought and sold now is on social media.
Yes.
Yeah, and
Very true.
seeing how, like, if you're a writer and artist for a comic book, you know, if you're working with the big companies and stuff, you're basically simply that. But when you're working independently and getting your stuff out there and working for yourself, you're like, oh, I'm also the editor and I'm the publisher. Now I'm the promoter, and now I'm just kind of doing a song and dance at the Comic-Con to get people to draw attention and everything. So yeah, it does take a lot of work and everything, and but it's always cool to kind of see people having these avenues like Kickstarter and Zoop and all of the different campaigns to, kind of reach out, find their, fans. Like I said, I don't even recall how this came into my hands other than me
Yeah.
just seeing League of Cryptids. I'm like, that sounds cool. Yeah, I'm going to get it. So,
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing now is I'm at the point in my career now where I'm trying to kind of re-examine, like, okay, on one hand, it's like, yeah, the marketing is important, but on the other hand, it's like, if I'm spending over half my time marketing the comic book, it's like, it's almost like, well, why did I even get into a creative field if I'm just gonna spend my entire day, on social media marketing this stuff? You know what I mean? Um, I don't know. It's a weird conundrum that we have now where it's like, I can't imagine like Steve Ditko or Jack Kirby having to be on Twitter like promoting their comic books.
yeah.
But I mean, it's the world we live in, so we have to figure out how to navigate it, right?
I think that's definitely a good reaction to that. Does anybody else have any questions before we kind of bring it back to a final little plug for the Kickstarter?
Well, I just
do.
want to say I've been looking at your Kickstarter while we've been talking here, and I like the way you put together the catch-up tiers. I'm just deciding how much can I afford to catch up right now. But that $55 get everything looks pretty interesting to me.
Well, that's a good problem to have, right? At least for
Yeah.
me.
Yep. I was gonna say, what is kind of your favorite comic book series? Mine is Star Wars.
Are you asking me?
Yeah,
Just kind of
yeah, just for funsies.
So my favorite current one, comic book series is a comic book from Vault called Barbaric.
Ooh, yes.
It is kind of an homage to Conan the Barbarian. The idea
Mm-hmm.
behind it is that a Conan the Barbarian substitute, a witch puts a spell on him that he can only act altruistically,
Oh.
and it's a lot of he has a talking axe that gets hungry for blood. Um, yeah, I don't. It's just a lot of fun. I love classic Conan the Barbarian, and this kind of I love classic Conan the Barbarian while admitting that parts of it are kind of silly or goofy, and this
Mhm.
kind of parodies uh, the silly or goofy parts of it.
Sure.
Um, it's just a really good series. I read
Excellent.
I read the first volume of uh, oh God, what was the name of that comic book? Oh no, I can't remember. It's a comic book from Image. I think The House on the Lake. Is that what it was called?
Oh, sure.
there's the Nice House on the Lake, which I think was one of the DC comics. Is that what we're talking about? Or is,
Yeah, Nice House on the Lake. Yeah, you're right. It's not from. I don't know why I thought that it was from Image. It's from the DC Black Label,
yeah, yeah.
and it's
By James Tinian.
yeah. The concept behind that is that these aliens uh, separate. Uh, I think it's like 6 or 7 members of the human race, and kind of
Mhm.
puts them in this cabin out in the woods, and it's kind of like it's kind of ambiguous. They haven't come right out and said um, it might be a situation where they destroyed all of Earth, and the only thing left of humanity are these 5 or 6 people, or they're using VR to get these people to think that the Earth was destroyed, just to do like
Okay.
experiments on them. I don't know. It's a really neat premise for a comic book, and the art is beautiful.
That does sound interesting.
I'm glad Katie brought that up because that's usually one of the questions I'll ask. Is that I love the idea if you're a comic book fan, that's always a good way to kind of find out about somebody new. It's just like, oh, what books do you like? Jim likes Batman and D&D and fantasy type stuff. Katie likes a lot of manga and Star Wars. I like Archie and Silver Surfer. So if you had to define yourself with comic book loves and just kind of the genres and characters and titles, what would come to mind for you?
So I don't read a lot of Marvel and DC anymore. I'm kind of superheroed out. But classically, I would say that I'm more of a DC guy than I am a Marvel guy. My favorite superhero of all time is Superman. Um, uh, I also, like I mentioned, I really love Conan the Barbarian. I've been really getting into all the I really love the fact that Conan is public domain now, so people
Mm.
can do different stuff with him. I actually just bought this one.
Oh.
Um, I think this is from Titan. Yeah, Titan Comics. But the thing that really caught my eye about this is the artist. I can't remember the artist's name. Robert De La Torre looks
Oh.
very, very John Buscema inspired. So it's kind of a nod to classic Conan the Barbarian because it's very John Buscema esque.
As a Silver Surfer fan, I can appreciate that for talking about John Buscema. Any other questions at all before we wrap this up?
I just wanted to let you know, Grant, that if you enjoyed The Nice House by the Lake, there is a follow-up series to that called The Nice House by the Sea that's on its like third or fourth issue right now that really expands the story.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I haven't checked it out yet. I'll probably wait till it comes out in trade paperback, though. I'm one of those guys.
I do this digital.
Okay.
Very cool. All right. Well, whether you're a physical comic book collector or a digital comic book collector, you're going to have a couple different options if you go to Kickstarter and you go and back League of Cryptids, because you're going to have a couple different choices. You can catch up on the past issue, get the brand new issue. Some of the stuff that we talked about with his other work, you can add that on for some digital tiers and things like that. So there's a bunch to look at. Just go to Kickstarter and type in League of Cryptids and find all of that information and help that campaign get to the finish line. At the time of this release, we will have a little under 3 weeks, so plenty of time to jump in there, but it's always good to back that when you can and show your support and share that. And that's how Grant is here on the show, because with being a follower of his on Instagram and sending a message over to me and offering me, free comics through his newsletter and a website and things like that. I'm like, oh, I already got League of Cryptids. I talked about it on the comic club I do, and then him basically saying, hey, I'm available for interviews to talk about the new one, and now here he is. So it's always cool to kind of connect with these kind of creators, because we could be talking about Marvel and DC, and we're not going to get, messages from those creators just saying, hey, I'll come on your show tomorrow. And so it's always fun to just kind of have that connection with reading this stuff, learning and finding out about new creators, and then right here, you're right here hanging out with the Crimson Cowl Comic Club. So yes.
Yeah.
So
Thanks for having me on.
yes. Thank you for hanging out with us, and everybody. If people wanted to follow you on social media with websites and whatever platforms you're on, if you want to give them the plugs for that, please.
Yeah, so I'm Grant Lankard, and that's a pretty distinct name. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Threads. I actually just deleted my Twitter page about a week ago, just because I was never on there and I hated the experience anyways. But yeah, I have a pretty distinct name. I'm pretty sure I'm the only Grant Lankard on any of those platforms.
That helps because we've had about 4 or 5 John Smiths talking about all their different comic books just this year alone. So it's great to have someone a little different. So, all right, that is going to do it. If you are new to the Crimson Cowl Comic Club, we also have episodes that we talk about books. We have club discussions. We do weekly reviews. We go through the previews catalogs as well as our creator interviews, which are exclusive to the YouTube because we have the whole video experience and showing up the examples and pages and all of that fun stuff. So if you're new to us, check out the channel and see if you dig it. And on the crimsoncowl.com website, we've got some free webcomics on there for myself and David that work with Crimson Cowl Media. So that is a quick little plug for us. And the last thing we want to say is just go to Kickstarter, check out League of Cryptids. Thank you, Grant, for hanging out with us. And we'll see you for issue number 2 on Kickstarter.
Sasquatch, the Loch Ness Monster, Mothman, the Jersey Devil, Chupacabra. For millennia, these creatures have perplexed the human race. But what if they are forces of good? What if they have been sent here by a federation of more advanced alien species to help and defend the human race? That's the premise of League of Cryptids, a new comic book by Grant Lankard, creator of the smash hits Beowulf and Memoirs of the Morbid. His new comic, League of Cryptids, is a 4-part story involving these 5 creatures banding together to defend Earth from an invading alien race, just as one of their members is losing faith in the human race and questioning their mission. The adventure continues in League of Cryptids 2.
Thank you, Slimer.